Now when news breaks out, there's simply no faster way to report on it than Twitter.
The Jordanian pilot, when that story broke, it did break on Twitter, it didn't break anywhere else.
I can visit Tunisia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, anywhere I want by just being on Twitter.
I could sit in Johannesburg and understand what was happening with the Chibok girls in Nigeria.
I never use Twitter exclusively, but it's a great compliment when there's an unfolding news event.
May 2013. Twitter advertises for its first head of news, a new role created to help media companies get the most out of the online platform and boost the company's sluggish growth. 5 months later, the successful applicant was announced on Twitter. Vivian Schiller took up the post in January 2014. Her aim, in the company's words, was to make Twitter indispensable to newsrooms and journalists.
So Twitter, the company, has realized that this is an important vector to have strong relationships with news organizations. It's an important part of the tool set that any newsroom uses for all aspects of journalism, from detecting news, finding witnesses, verifying information, distributing content, engaging with audiences.
Twitter has completely reshaped my editing and journalistic life because it offers you ways of communicating that were almost unheard of to very, very new audiences. Studies now show that it's very much social media, specifically Twitter, that sets the news agenda. So any journalist without an account is a little bit like a dinosaur.
Over 75% of journalists identified Twitter as the #1 place for their professional presence online, ahead of Facebook and even LinkedIn. The person on the ground can directly get the story out to the audience on Twitter, as opposed to the old days where you'd then run to a telephone and file the story with the news desk and it'd be out the next morning.
Twitter has 304 million active users, numbers other platforms would kill for. But in the increasingly competitive social media market, Twitter is facing questions about its future.
How can a service which is built around 140-character snippets of text survive in a video-oriented world? To move beyond the text tweet option, Twitter has acquired a variety of software applications to enhance its storytelling capabilities, like Vine, a looping video app that gives you 6 seconds to make your point. A looping video app that gives you 6 seconds to make your point. It's a video where it just keeps playing back to back, and then you can publish it on Twitter. Vine comes in handy when you're using this as a teaser for something bigger. Periscope is something where you reach out to your audience. It's actually a live app where you get to shoot live and you get direct interactions and direct questions from people on your applications and on Twitter. So they're commenting and they're interacting and just asking questions and just giving live feedback to the presenter on what should be done.
As of yet, these new journalistic tools haven't had the desired effect. When Twitter's former CEO, Dick Costolo, quit his post in July, one of the reasons he gave was his failure to make Twitter's products more appealing. But figuring out what Twitter can do, what it actually is, has been a challenge that goes all the way back to its founding. They called it a social network. They called it microblogging, but it was hard to define. The insight we eventually came to was Twitter was really more of an information network than it is a social network. And if Twitter's founders were confused when they came up with it, it's no wonder journalists are still trying to figure out how to use it.
Twitter is an important complement to the process of news gathering, but it is a complement and it needs to be used in consort with professional journalism, professional journalists. So there's 500 million tweets sent every day, but it's a matter of taking all that data, and that is a lot of data, and figuring out how to sift it to find the needles in the haystack.
It's much harder to have people believe what you're saying because there's so much noise and everybody is selling something, an agenda or a product or a media organization or a spin. So much noise.
I'm a fan of live tweeting news events because I think it's the quick-fire, rapid way to get news out. Obviously, it has its drawbacks. It hasn't got meaning, it can often lack context, and it can often be inaccurate.
The biggest challenge of Twitter is also its biggest virtue. There's no editor. So you write that tweet and you click tweet. It doesn't even say, are you sure you want to tweet this? It instantly tweets. There's also no breathalyzer on Twitter. It's very easy to tweet while under the influence of many substances. So the challenge with it all is, how do you exercise that judgment? How do you keep yourself from going too far?
And that's exactly how some journalists have found themselves in serious trouble. Earlier this year, Australian broadcaster SBS fired one of its sports journalists for a series of tweets posted on Anzac Day, a national holiday celebrating Australian military prowess. Scott McIntyre's provocative tweets about violent acts committed historically by the Australian military were deemed despicable. And losing your job over a tweet isn't new. Back in 2010, Octavia Nasser's departure from CNN hit the headlines, not just Twitter. Using her official Middle East senior editor handle, Nasser posted a personal tweet on the death of Ayatollah Fadlallah, who was instrumental in the establishment of Hezbollah in Lebanon.
What happened is a group of, extreme, agenda-driven right-wingers basically took that and campaigned against me. They jumped to a conclusion. They spinned my tweet and made it into something that it is not. And they put it out there, and they attacked me, and they asked my employer very actively, they asked for them to fire me. And CNN, although they never used the word firing, basically called me and said, okay, we're gonna have to go our separate ways.
Twitter's feedback loop does have its drawbacks, but on the flip side, this back and forth with your followers means Twitter has become an indispensable part of news gathering the world over.
Twitter works closely with news organizations to help them get the most out of Twitter, but there are many competitors, of course. Facebook has made a very aggressive movement towards working more closely with news organizations, and Instagram, even Snapchat, have come up as other powerful platforms and tools for news organizations. So there's a lot of competition out there.
If Twitter wants to keep its place in the newsroom, the new CEO will have their work cut out updating the Twitter toolset for journalists. And they might want to start with defining exactly what Twitter is. Clearly, that's going to take some serious thought and more than 140 characters of text.